On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what is on your Thunder Christmas wish list? Who's on the naughty and nice list? The Thunder went 3-1 with an asterisk this week. Alex Caruso, contract extension eligible. We're going to dive into it all.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO ThunderPod. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. We're joined today by Michael Martin at Michael on Sports. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. With the NFL playoffs almost here, it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel right now. New customers can finish the year strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com right now to get started. Michael, we're here. It's holiday hoop season. The Thunder are going to play tonight on Christmas Eve. Any holiday traditions in the Martin household?
We usually do family gifts on Christmas Eve and then the actual like Santa Claus gifts on Christmas Day. But other than that, nothing too crazy. Anything crazy going down with the Stiles household down in Lawton?
Yeah, down in Lawton, we get wacky. We go just see Christmas lights, usually Christmas Eve, and then watch Christmas Vacation, the very best Christmas movie for my money. But this is the Christmas edition of Locked On Thunder, although you will get one on Christmas Day as well. But we're going to have a bit of a Christmas theme later in the show with your wish list, which could be anything from a trade to what you hope happens internally with the team. Also, the naughty and nice list is just a funny way of saying who's been better than expected, who needs to improve on this roster. But we start in review. The Thunder did go 3-1, technically. Only two of those games counted. They were both wins, luckily for Oklahoma City, or 2-1, I should say, not 3-1. But how did you feel starting on Tuesday after that Bucks game where, like, on one hand, you held Milwaukee to under 100 points, but you really struggled offensively?
Yeah, it was a deflating loss, and I think it was just because Thunder fans were so excited to finally be on this big stage, and unfortunately the game didn't go their way offensively where they couldn't make many shots. So I think there was some frustration of that, and then just sort of there was some piling on that was just sort of unfair. But the reality is it's just 1 out of 82. It just happened to be when they were the one team playing that night opposite of Milwaukee. And then I feel like they rebounded pretty quickly back after that, but nonetheless, you would like to get that cup win, but it's not the end of the world like I see some people were talking about. It seems like pretty quickly people have turned around now that we've got a couple other games on the docket that have been played.
So I promise we'll get back to this review of the week, but literally breaking live on the pod, Alex Caruso has signed his contract extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder, publishing my story on Thunder on SI live on the pod. But it is for his max that he could have gotten with that 4-year, $81 million deal for Caruso and the Thunder. I thought that the extension part was pretty obvious. I don't think that you trade for Caruso without wanting to sign him, especially with the way that Sam has talked about Caruso since the preseason, whenever he was asked about this very subject. And the only wiggle room was like, that was the most you could offer him. What would it actually settle in at? And now we actually have it here at the max contract. What's your first impression of this Alex Caruso signing?
Happy it got done now. We talked about it before on a different pod of just all the contracts that are coming up with this team this summer and in the incoming summers in the near future. That just getting this out of the way and just having that comfort security blanket of just knowing it's done, I think is really, really good. 81 over 4, that seems like fair value. I think that some people look at the price tag a little bit, but with the CBA going up, I think that's going to be fine. I'm really interested to see just sort of how, if it is an escalating deal, de-escalating, years guaranteed, whatever it is, but from top to bottom, very excited for Thunder fans. And to your credit and what you mentioned, like, Presti didn't make this deal just as a rental. This was something that they sort of saw a little bit more longer term, and I'm just glad that they ended up getting it done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think that you're right of, like, now getting the max is what we expect it to be. Obviously, you could always sign for less, but rarely does that ever happen. It comes down to how it's structured, and the Thunder have been very good at structuring contracts. And with Caruso being a team-oriented guy, I would wonder if this is a front-loaded contract similar to Wiggins and Joe, where like their money is at the front end. It de-escalates whenever you're going to have the extensions kick in for Chet and for J-Dub. Like they're going to sign them immediately, this summer, but it's not going to kick in for another year. So like then you have some wiggle room there with this deal. But I think that it just comes down to, if you are going to paint the picture of a Thunder player, it would be Alex Caruso. This is an incredibly selfless guy, an incredibly versatile guy. And I think that the best is still yet to come for him in Oklahoma City. You look at what he's done in his last 10 games, it's looked way more like, the Caruso you were expecting. But I mean, this is how that Sam Presti talks about Caruso, is that like, well, I hope that we're smart enough to keep him this time, was his quote from the preseason, and talking about him as a human, as a player, everything. So I just, obviously you're happy for Caruso, a guy who really is a underdog story of undrafted, working the G League circuit, getting the NBA championship with the Lakers, getting now his second big contract, by his standards, because he came out undrafted. It's great for him, but for the Thunder, it's also great because I still strongly believe in, while he does have to improve from his overall numbers, he is going to be that perfect fit that we were talking about in July.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be somebody who puts up gaudy numbers. He hasn't been that guy in his career, but much to the point of like how he helped that Lakers team win a title, he's just kind of going to fill whatever roles needed on a given night. If you need him to hit a couple more threes and space the floor, hopefully he can do that. Defensively, he's going to take on whatever challenge you need him to on any spot on the floor, any position. So I think it's really great to have that. You have the synergy of how long he's been sort of with the system. And then I love the dynamic that he has with Mark, as he seems the most like, in terms of just like the coach on the floor and just an extension of Mark that the team has. And I feel like that's really, really raised the level of sort of just, I don't know, I don't want to say competitive energy to insinuate they weren't super, super competitive before, but I feel like it's just added on and just tacked on a few extra notches.
I think that Caruso has heightened it, and Hartenstein has heightened it. Caruso himself has given more credit to Hartenstein for this shtick of like becoming a more aggressive team, becoming a more physical team. But Caruso has certainly helped in that area in a more quiet tone of like, he's not getting the skirmishes started, but on a play-to-play basis, he's playing very physical. You look at Caruso since coming back from the injury, and remember, he had 2 different stints where he was out with this hip injury. But in the last 6 games for him, he's averaging 7 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, half a block per game, and he's shooting 37% from 3 on 4 attempts per game. And if you really, try to extend that out to those couple of games he had on the previous injury, like where he had played those 2 games and got hurt again, he had his 3-point percentage all the way up to 40% in the last 10 games. So you're starting to see him find his groove and kind of work back into what was expected of him. And you asked Mark today at practice about kind of the role for him off the bench, and that's another luxury for Oklahoma City, is having a guy like this who can be a swing starter. I fully believe that you're still going to see eventually, in the course of these 4 years, Caruso be featured in stretches as a starter. But man, what a luxury it is to have a guy like that off the bench.
Yeah, he's just the ultimate bench player. Like I mentioned, he just fills a bunch of roles. And really the important thing with him is not about starting. It's about finishing games, and he profiles as a guy more likely to do that and help winning than Giddey did, which, just 1-to-1 is the guy he was traded for. So I'm really excited to see how he sort of evolves with his team. I think he's a great locker room guy. I think he's a great mentor. He brings that championship experience that this Thunder team needs. Although he wasn't like the main star or main guy, I think he was a high-level contributor, and I think that experience does matter. So just locking down another good player for the Thunder, I think, is really, really big. And to the points that we've made before, just getting it out of the way early, so there's no drama about it, there's no questions about it around the deadline or anything like that, I think is really important.
So we kind of expected him to be signed, didn't know when it was going to happen. I thought, after it wasn't done at midnight Friday, maybe it was going to linger a little bit, but here it is on Sunday night before the Monday game. with Caruso's contract, you mentioned that the CBA going up will make this look less shocking than the sticker price is right now. That is true. It also creates a very tradable contract. And now you have Joe as a very hefty contract that's tradable. Wiggins is a very hefty contract that's tradable. Caruso is now a hefty contract that's tradable. While I do not believe Caruso will be traded, I would bet on him finishing out this contract in Oklahoma City. It gives you the option, and you're seeing it right now. Like now that the trade window is here, really, like the unofficial trade window, whenever half the league gets eligible to be traded at December 13th. Now that that's passed, you're seeing the reports and the rumors of who's going where and how much you get restricted with contracts and having to match money dollar for dollar. And so piling these kind of contracts that don't hinder you from signing your young core, which this does not, and allows you to be flexible on the trade market is a big deal, even though I still expect Caruso to be in OKC, for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I'd say the same. And to your point, it's important to have those flexible, smaller deals that you can stack up into bigger money. I think that was a big thing with the Celtics for quite a while that they ended up riding the ship on so they can get Porzingis and Drew Holiday and other guys. But for a while, it was just like they just didn't have any mid-level contracts to really move or anything like that. And the Thunder can now do that, because what you don't want to have is a roster of just all top-heavy contracts, sort of like the Suns have right now, where you can only trade max for max, and then especially if you're hitting your head up against one of the two aprons, it's just going to make things almost impossible. So not expecting or anticipating any Caruso trade anytime soon, or really at all, but just having that flexibility and just the option if something does happen is important.
I'm excited about this. I think that it creates a level of comfortability, probably for the player. I know that whenever they traded for him, even though they couldn't officially negotiate deals, I'm sure it was a wink, nudge thing of like, we want to keep you here. But there is a little bit of a sigh of relief of like, okay, now you have this stability. And it's not only stability in terms of like Chicago gave him of signing him, but stability of this is the right length of contract. This is the most amount of money you could have gotten. And this is a team that in these 4 years looks to not only be competitive and good, but like they could be great in this window. So all those things kind of lead into more comfortability, which leads into more confidence, and perhaps you see him continue to grow on this really good 10-game stretch from him. Coming up, we'll talk about Caruso a little bit more, and then we're going to go back to the originally scheduled program of the week in review and our wish list and so much more. But first, I want to tell you right now, our good friends over at Skylight, go check them out today. Skylight frames are great because you want to celebrate with everyone and stay connected with people who are far away. And if you're missing someone this holiday season and want them to be a part of your festivities from afar, you can check out Skylight frames, because it makes a great gift giving that is easy to relate to, right? So you give this gift away, and what it is it's a Skylight frame that's digitally there for you to upload photos to, and you can kind of share seamlessly photos between your extended family who perhaps live out of state, and maybe you have a young one that you want to keep them updated on, and put pictures into their digital touchscreen photo frame that the whole family will love. You can upload thousands of photos from your phone to have them appear in seconds on the frame, and they'll flip through those and kind of keep your family, friends in the loop of what's going on. It's so easy to use. You set it up and it takes less than 60 seconds. Invite your friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app, or you can even use an email account with no subscription and no account required. So you can add in these photos straight from your phone from anywhere. The touchscreen is a game changer to swipe through your photos and see what else new has popped up. And you can even double tap the frame to say a thank you to your sender and give a heart on that photo. It looks beautiful in the home because they're HD resolution, and you can choose from 5 different frame styles to make sure it matches your decor. Set up the portrait or landscape mode even, so you can go check it out today. And it makes a very meaningful, personalized gift that you can preload memories onto before you give it to the person without even opening the box. So surprise them with old sentimental photos as soon as they plug it in. Go check it out today, because a special limited time offer is here for you, for our listeners. Get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. here talking Alex Caruso's extension, which broke in the first minute of the show. So glad we weren't finished with us by the time that came out, and so much more. But real quickly on Caruso, I imagine he would have been on Your Naughty and Nice list as he was for me. But this overall, if you go look at his basketball reference page, like for the entire season, it's not what you envision, right? 5 points a game, 3 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 38% from the floor, 27% from three. It's messy, but in that comes he's trying to adjust to a new team, a very unique play style, and was dealing with that hip injury. As we've already mentioned, that last 10 games, he's back up to 37 to 40% three-point shooter, and he's giving you that all-out defensive effort. Obviously, Caruso has to be better for a longer extended period of time, but I still think that the vision and the goal of what you were hoping to capture whenever you traded for Caruso has been fulfilled, so long as that three-point shot continues to find its level where it has been for him throughout his career. I mean, this guy is still, even if you don't believe in the 40% he shot last year, he's a 37% three-point shooter for his career on pretty high volume. I think that that's a perfect player next to this core.
Yeah, I think he's going to be fine long term. We saw a similar slump from Kaysen to start this season from three, and he's sort of bounced back. But another thing is we just have to wait for them to get Chet back as well. I mean, you mentioned those injuries. The biggest injury of the season has been Chet, and there was some time where both those guys were sharing the floor at the same time. But even if his shooting isn't just super, super elite and is somewhat lackluster or just somewhat slightly a notch below what we've seen from him, if you're playing with 5-out spacing and he's the worst shooter on the floor, that is totally fine, because you saw them play with worse shooters with Giddey last year, but he's a much better defender, so he can sort of pull that up on the other end. But long term, not really too worried about Caruso, and with this Thunder team and all their assets, if they need to improve any shooting, we know that they can do that.
And Caruso was the feature of Saturday morning's Styles Points, and so I was digging into all the stuff he does well. First and foremost, like, I think it's easy to call Caruso a good defender. He's like best of the world defender stuff. I mean, overall, just all encompassing every possession that he ever has defended. He's defended in 179 possessions. He lets up 0.5 points per attempt, which is in the 96th percentile overall. Now, when you break that down even further, if you try to put him in the pick and roll, matchups are only scoring 0.3 points per possession, which is the 98th percentile. Like, that's how lethal he is of blowing things up. If you're trying to shoot a jump shot over him, he's in the 99th percentile defending jump shots. And that's 98th percentile for catch and shoot, 99% for overall jump shots defended. This guy is literally one of one. And you still have the argument that Chet and what he does at the rim is a more impactful defender, that Lou Dort gets flowers. But like this guy, he's a unique defender. That stuff has traveled over with him from Chicago. And I just look at the offense, and it's been messy at times. It's been clunky at times, but he's not going to shoot 27% on catch and shoot jumpers the entire season as he has to this point. Like, it's going to course correct. And at that time, you're going to love every cent of this Alex Caruso extension. It does not hinder them from their young core. They weren't going to go make a big splash in free agency anyway. And this is a guy who is a home run hit without impacting anything else, not taking away touches from your young guys, not taking away money from your young guys. This was just an all-around great move for the Thunder.
Yeah, he only gives and doesn't take anything off the table for this team. He has no ego. He doesn't play for himself. No agenda basketball, Presti's favorite term recently. He just helps you win. He's going to be in a good mood, good spirit, good leader. He has a good relationship with the front office, good relationship with the coaching staff. So just top to bottom, I think this is a really, really good deal. And to your point about him defensively, like, there's not an aspect of defense that he's not pretty elite at. Even as a rim protector, as a guard, like, he gets all these low down blocks. I made a video about that quite a while ago. But I wish he would get some sort, I don't want to compare and contrast these guys, but I wish he would get some of the love that sort of guys like Drew Holiday get.
Yeah, he is, I think, not only in that caliber, but he has the argument for being better than these other perimeter defenders who have gotten more appreciation, although he is a two-time all-defensive member. I do think that in terms of defensive player of the year voting, we do have to stop skewing big men just for the sake of skewing big men. Like, these perimeter guys have a really tough job too, in the modern NBA, and Caruso is chief among them with his ability to defend truly 1-4, and in a pinch defend the 5 as well. And you saw him have to play center whenever they didn't have a big for that couple week period. But great signing for the Thunder, great trade for the Thunder still. And I think that this season will continue to bear that out as we go along. Now, briefly now, going back to last week, because we've spent a lot of time on this Caruso stuff. Tuesday's loss sucked. It was a gut punch for Thunder fans. You have to figure out how to beat a team that is capable of packing the paint and playing physical with you. One way to figure that out is to continue to ram your head against it. I think that since we've seen this team develop, and if you're listening to this show on Christmas Eve, you've watched this entire core grow up for the majority of their games, if not all their games. So to you, it feels like this has been a really long time. In the grand scheme of basketball, it's been a very short time. And so, of course, they're not going to be ready yet, although it was a disappointing game on Tuesday. But I thought that they showed great resilience to fly across country to Orlando and get there and play the Magic, play the Heat on a back-to-back and get a back-to-back sweep. I mean, I was talking to Paris Lawson at practice, and she was like, that flight takes you out. And that's for Paris Lawson, who it does affect you whenever anyone just flies there. Now try to fly there and play professional basketball and play it to the way that they did, a physical style, two very defensive focused games where they continue to hold their opponents under 100 points. I thought that they should get a ton of kudos, even though they did play a Heat team that lost Jimmy Butler in the game and a Magic team without Paolo and Franz. It still is really hard to win in this league, especially with all of that circumstances. So I thought a 2-1 week was very impressive.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, it was just one of those scenarios where the biggest one was the one that was the most disappointing, and that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But you mentioned the road trip and the travel. That's not easy by any means. I mean, I can make fun of me if you want. I can feel tired at times whenever there's just a big homestand. I'm not even playing. Yeah. I'm not traveling or anything. I'm just driving to the games and covering them. So I feel it for these guys. And to your point, it feels like it's a big deal in a really long time because all of us have been following this team day in and day out. But I have to remind myself a lot of times, J-Dub's in year 3. There's still such a big runway. Think about the player that Shea was in year 3 to now. And that doesn't mean he's going to have that same, growth trajectory as Shea, but just there's so much room for improvement. There's so much time. And I know that people are looking at the title window as now, and it is now, but that doesn't mean that it's all or nothing at this exact moment. And then as for those 2 games in Florida, some impressive wins because although those teams do lack some talent just due to injuries and Jimmy Butler getting sick, those are 2 teams who are elite defenses, really good coaches, and they just don't beat themselves. They're going to make you beat them. And you saw that in both games where the Thunder kind of did get lackadaisical at times, and then those teams made a run, and then the Thunder had to close them out.
Now, looking ahead to this week, and I feel like because of the way that the December schedule is set up, we've been saying this every week, but it's another week that feels like the Thunder have to capitalize. And eventually the dam's going to break, and it's going to be hard to do. But, man, you get the Wizards at home. You get at Indiana, at Charlotte. And the reason I say that this is a must 2-1 week, and it'd be great if you can go 3-0, is because what happens afterward. After this stretch, when you come back on Sunday, you got Memphis, you got Minnesota, the Clippers, and New York on a back-to-back, and then Boston 3 games in 4 nights. That's really tough. And that's like a homestand that it's great to be home, and it's especially great for this team who's rarely been home over the last 38 days. But those opponents are no joke, and all of them are capable of winning that game, whereas the Wizards and the Hornets should not be capable of winning against the Thunder. For the Thunder to lose these 2 games, it's themselves with inflicted wounds, and that cannot happen when you need to store up wins ahead of a grueling stretch.
Yeah, I can't really wrap my head around them losing the Wizards. Something just drastic would have to happen. As for the Hornets and the Pacers, I think that their case is just the 3-point variance game. Those 2 teams are among the top of the league in 3-point shooting and 3-point volume, so they can really make it rain and make it just change in a hurry. And we saw the Thunder in recent weeks throughout the season have gotten really, really cold from 3 at times. So I think that could happen. But overall, this should be one of those things where the Thunder's depth once again wins out. Whenever you see some of these games where the Thunder sort of play sort of tight in the first quarter, and then you see the second units come in, and then there's a little bit more of a gap, and then they start building a lead. That's what I think should happen. But like we've talked about it before, when they got in trouble against New Orleans and then recently against Orlando, at some point you're going to get caught. So I'm hoping these are more and more lessons that the Thunder can learn to sort of not let those things happen, because if you do that against good teams and even just run of the mill, just sort of average to below average teams like the Hornets and the Pacers who can really, really rain threes, at some point you're going to get caught.
Yeah, at some point it's going to happen, but that's why I kind of give them a 1-game leeway of maybe the Pacers just get incredibly hot, but you got to go 2-1 in my opinion, and that's what I think that they're going to do. Where are you at with this week?
I'll go with 3-0, but at the very minimum, to your point, they got to go at least 2-1.
Now, finally, after all the breaking news, we're going to get to our Christmas portion of the Christmas Eve edition of Locked On Thunder. But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at Built, go check them out today because this show's sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is the total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with of course, travel and groceries. Paying rent now becomes a serious perk. It's completely free to join. Go right now and check them out today because you can earn valuable Built points on your rent on everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points toward flights, hotels, and even future rent payments with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program. The possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. Go check them out today because you have to love using Built points. You're going to have to pay the rent anyway. You might as well be earning rewards on top of that. So check it out today and start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure that you use our link. That way they know we sent you. That's the way you can start to earn your rewards today. Don't wait and get that done at built.com, joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Also want to say right now, but our friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today to get started. America's #1 sports book, and it's playoff time in the NFL. It's almost here, but it's still not too late with a couple more games left to get in on the regular season action. America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has many ways for you to pick up a W. Love betting on which players will have more touchdowns, how many points each team will score. It's really thrilling to add into the mix whenever you're watching the game. You also can, of course, bet on spreads, player props, over-unders at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, make every moment more at FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. If you're only into the NBA, you can still bet on that as well, including on Monday, the Thunder taking on the Wizards, where the Thunder are 5.5-point favorites at home over Washington. Go check that out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. This is the Christmas Eve edition, even though for you early risers, it'll come out on Sunday because of the Alex Caruso extension. But still, in the spirit, I guess Christmas Eve, technically, because this will come out pretty soon. Let's have some holiday celebrations, Michael, starting out with your Thunder wish list. What's the first item on your Thunder wish list?
Just in terms of guys playing better, worse, trades, which one are you referring to here first?
So with the wish list, let's go if you have a trade on your wish list.
We've talked about a lot of these. I'm going to go in a different direction because everybody knows the normal suspects and stuff like that, the guy over in Brooklyn playing. But I'm going to go with Malik Monk. If the Kings decide to blow it up, I think would be a really good addition to this team as another on-ball creator, another three-point shooter. Rylan and I talk about trades all the time, and he's heard my soapbox speech about this, but I think it'd be a really interesting addition where you'd sort of get, I don't want to say Isaiah Joe on steroids, but I guess Isaiah Joe with less of a conscience, shooting from three with more ball handling juice.
So I like Monk, and I mean, they're monitoring the De'Aaron Fox situation, so who knows where Sacramento ends up by February. I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility. The top of my wish list is one that's routinely out there. It's already out there everywhere. Cam Johnson. Mm-hmm. I just think that Cam Johnson fits so seamlessly with what the Thunder want to do, and he gives you that 6'8" forward, that kind of bigger body power forward that you need comparatively to the rest of this roster, who is a actual like sharpshooter, not someone who is capable of shooting, capable of a hot night. Like, that he's going to come in and get the job done from three. And it really works with this drive and kick style. You don't sacrifice anything defensively. I don't think that the Thunder need to make a trade, but if they were going to, I would love Cam Johnson on this roster.
Yeah, I can't push back on that at all. I think we would all love to see Cam Johnson in this team. Do they need to make a trade right now, given their record and how well they're playing? No, but does that mean they won't at some point, close to the deadline? Probably, I would say, if they do make a trade, anything can happen. I mean, we've seen some surprising trades from the Thunder in the past, and I don't think he's going to be in a similar situation, any of these guys that the Thunder could potentially trade for, to a Gordon Hayward they were adding last year off an injury, who was a really, really tough, I guess, transition for him, trying to, I guess, consolidate his role in a little bit. A guy like Cam Johnson knows his role, knows what he's being asked to do, and like you mentioned, not just a shooter who shoots really well on a low volume, he's a capital S shooter who shoots at a high efficiency clip on a high volume.
And you can go to the Spotrac trade machine, which I would encourage all of you to do, because it's operating with the new CBA. The other trade machines still kind of have the old CBA mixed in there, so it creates these weird, like, approved trades that aren't really approved trades, but Spotrac's really good at getting it done for you if you want to play the game of fake trades. And if you want to make Cam Johnson fake trades, one of the more encouraging parts of this trade is that the main salary piece can be Aaron Wiggins. And I'm a huge Aaron Wiggins guy. I believe that they should play him more. The reality is they don't play him, and they don't play him in big games. Like, his minute per game total has increased this season, but whenever you go through his game logs, every big game he's playing under 10 minutes. And if you don't want to play him in big games because of the defense, I totally respect that. But you can go get a guy who does what Wiggins does, souped up, and plays defense at a high enough clip to where Mark would play him. I find it very interesting. It would depend on what the asking price would be for the other stuff. Because obviously, like, technically, you can trade Kenrich and Wiggins for, Johnson contractually. It's not going to get the yes answer. What do you have to put with it to get them to a yes? And I think that would impact how this goes. I'm also very curious if the Thunder make a trade deadline deal. I'm not saying that they won't, but it's just really interesting the way that Sam talked about the Gordon Hayward trade, of trying to anticipate adding a player mid-season and kind of throwing him into the mix, and how it takes to gel and what it does to your team chemistry, for paraphrasing sake, with what Sam was saying. I don't read that as like he's shut off to ever making another trade deadline deal. I just think that it would be an interesting case study of, like, this particular trade deadline, when things are going so well, when you still have, like, the ability to say, well, the Thunder are already this good and they haven't had Hartenstein and Chet yet. Like, is this the time where you really want to get back into the trade deadline market? Obviously, the Hayward deal set up more than just on the court stuff last year. It set up the ability to sign Hartenstein. We'll see what they do at the deadline. I wouldn't rule anything out, but if you're going to go make a move, Cam Johnson, I think, is the very best move you can make.
Yeah, to your point about bringing in Hartenstein and Chet, you're making an addition just with Chet coming back. I mean, around the trade deadline, that's probably where I'm expecting him to be back and, like, sort of really, really getting into rhythm and sort of finding his feet there. Then, as you mentioned with trades, none of us want to trade Aaron Wiggins, but the reality is with these trades, you don't just give garbage for good things. Like, the Nets are not dumb. They know that Cam Johnson is a good player, so you have to trade good assets for good assets. And the cool thing is with the Thunder, if they're going to be trade partners for the Nets, it really matches up well, because the Nets are a rebuilding team that wants young players and they want picks. What do the Thunder have? Both of those things. Nikola Topic, lottery guy, and then you've got all these picks that you can choose from this draft in the future. I think it is a really nice match, and hopefully something gets done, but I'm not anticipating it anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think that the trade will happen. Obviously, like Wiggins and Joe in particular, who would need to be involved in this deal to make it work, they can't be traded until middle of January. And a trade like this does not happen before the deadline, hardly ever. So all you see before the deadline is what we've seen already. Like Thomas Bryant gets traded, Dennis Schroeder gets traded, and even that was a pretty upscale compared to what we usually get in December. So, like, this is not intimate stuff, but it's just interesting to, like, make up these wish lists right now. But we do have plenty of time to talk trades. So we'll move on to a different form of Thunder wish list. My second item is I want Cason Wallace to continue to attack the basket relentlessly, because when he does, every other part of his game opens up. And so, like, if you can get that Cason Wallace in the starting lineup, so this is a two-part wish, just start him every game, and then off of that, let him read the floor very well, get to the rim, because then that opens up his passing lanes. It opens up his confidence to shoot the ball from three. Like every time that Kaysen has a good game, it's kind of predicated on him getting to the rim.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd love to see that as well. I think Kaysen, when he gets downhill, is really, really dynamic. For a smaller guy, he is a really good athlete. We've seen him posterize a couple of guys here and there, and I think that really does generate a little bit more confidence for him. I think it is easier to go cold when you're just playing on the perimeter and you're not really actively driving with, which I'm not saying he's doing it, driving with the goal of getting to the rim and finishing. So I'd say that as well. And then what is on my wish list here? I'd like to see just some more consistent shooting from Isaiah Joe. I mean, he's the most important shooter probably on this team just off the bench. And I think he's gone like 5 of 19 in the last 5 games or something like that. So just a streak of just like the hot stretch of like bouncing back to his averages or progressing to the means, I think would be really good for him in this team, because when he's shooting really well, that's when this team tends to really, really get rolling offensively.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what that looks like for Caruso and for obviously the rest of this roster. And the wish list, I think, is a lot of fun to have already. And we're going to skip the naughty and nice thing because we're running out of time here. We also have more breaking news, Michael.
Really?
We have more breaking news. The injury report for the Washington Wizards game on Monday has been released. And Jalen Williams is back. J-Will no longer on the injury report. He is back. So everyone wondering when the hamstring would heal for J-Will, it is right now. He's back. So any thoughts on kind of what he looks like in this Thunder rotation?
It's a good time to get him back. I mean, we talked about sort of the ease of this next schedule. You get a lot of time to run him out there against a team like the Wizards and just really shake the rust loose. But just, again, it gives them more optionality for this team, where I think that talking about some of the 3-point numbers going down for the Thunder, I was mentioning this the other day to somebody. Hartenstein, great in his own right, doesn't shoot the three. J-Will was playing a lot of these second unit minutes where he can shoot the three more reliably. So I think it's going to be really interesting with that. Maybe they won't go double big with Hartenstein and J-Will. I think that's a bit too far-fetched, but still, I think it does just give them more depth, more optionality, and hopefully can give some of these guys a little bit of an easier time of less burn, like Hartenstein and J-Dub at 5 lineups, because I think those do, especially Dub at the 5, tend to grind these guys down, but I'm really excited.
I'm excited about it too. I think that you just get back to the same formula as last regular season, where the Thunder have been this good with only one big and Kenrich Williams playing small. Now you have Jalen Williams and Kenrich Williams down there on the secondary unit, which does elongate your depth and does help you navigate through this stretch of the season here where you just played 3 games in 4 nights. We already looked ahead to the schedule on the first part of the show, where you have another 3-game and 4-night stretch only against the Clippers, Knicks, and Celtics. Like, you're going to need your depth. You're going to need everyone on board. And I think that J-Will comes in here in year 3, making his season debut. It'll be a lot of fun just to see what the wrinkles look like. He did play only 2% of his minutes with Chet last year, so I don't know that we're going to get double bigs, but I like the idea, and I like the potential shooting variants that we've mentioned before, where the Thunder don't have a lot of guys who you can say without a shadow of a doubt will shoot the ball well on any given night. But if you continue to have these darts to throw at the dartboard, you have to imagine one of them will be hot. Like, one of them will have a 2 for 3 plus night from 3. And so J-Will gives you another chance at that outcome.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic. You also get some more playmaking chops out of him, like we've seen with Hartenstein. Hartenstein's a better passer, but you also get that dynamic. But yeah, I think the 3-point shooting is going to be really big for this team. You get some more pick and pop things, that just elements they haven't really had other than with J-Dub and Kenrich, but they aren't setting screens as big as J-Will. So overall, interested to see, ready to see him draw his first charge.
Yeah, first charge is going to be electric. What a night in the Paycom Center tomorrow, huh? It would have only been better had you been able to raise an NBA Cup banner, but it's going to be Caruso's first game with a locked-up tenure that will at least be in town for a couple more years, and then J-Will's debut, who always brings the energy. So very exciting stuff. Michael, thanks again for joining us at Michael on Sports on Twitter, at Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. What are you cooking up?
This week, I'm going to try to get it out by Christmas Eve, if not Christmas Day, but just doing an oral history, sort of reviewing all the Thunder games from Christmas. They played 9 games on Christmas, which I looked into is a lot more than you would expect given compared to the rest of the league's history. So a lot of cool stuff on that, going back from 2010 all the way to 2019, just recapping some of the games, some of the other fun stuff.
And if you've watched the Michael videos like you're supposed to, you know that the memes in there are great, and I cannot even begin to fathom what Christmas level memes will be in there for that video. So make sure you go check that out. Michael, thanks again for joining us. And until tomorrow, whenever we recap the Wizards game, be good and be good to one another.